Now, it's a fascinating time to be in FM. And for those of you managing offices, there's a lot of conflicting noise out there. We hope that today will give you some clarity, and it's always best to start with some data. The Leesman organisation have been providing us with valuable information on how occupants feel about their workplaces for a good 10 years, and I always read their reports with great interest. Even better is to hear their findings from their CEO and founder, a regular at Workplace Future conferences. Respect, please, for Tim Oldman.
Thank you, Martin. Morning, everybody. Still feels strange not to be there, doesn't it? In the place together, enjoying that weirdly sour tasting coffee and the silly little French pastries. But hey, at least nobody's accidentally spilled it down their white shirt and embarrassing themselves for the rest of the session. So really pleased to be back, and congratulations to David and the team again for convening an awesome lineup for you today. I'm kicking it off, as always, with data. I apologize for that. I know it's not the thing you always want first thing in the morning, but that's what we bring to the party. So the people and place debate, right? It's suddenly, the weirdness of us not being in the same place together for an event like this, as colleagues, as co-workers, as collaborators together continues. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we can say goodbye to that soon. But the people and place debate for me has a new dimension, and it's time, and that's what I really want to keep coming back to this morning as a reference point. For any of you, hopefully you all know who we are, but for any of you who don't know who we are, 11 years ago, we started out on a mission to create the world's largest data set of employees' workplace experiences. Singular purpose, to help you and all of those professionals involved in the delivery and the design of workplace ecosystems deliver better places for people to work. It's really, really that simple. It is all we do. We still remain wholly independent in those appraisals. So it does mean that all of the data I'm going to give you insights to this morning are there to fuel your work. Whether you use us or not, the research that my team create is there for public consumption. And I hope, fingers crossed, that you're going to get some things today that you can take back into your work and use, because more than ever before, data is driving decisions as business around the types of stuff that we are all interested, we all get up in the morning to work to. In terms of offices, that's over 840,000 employees now in that database, so that I'm going to be referencing their experience of place. And in February last year, we pivoted and developed a new tool, Leesman Home, now sitting on 180,000 employee responses to the experience that they're having worked remote in their own homes for the last 17, 18 months or so. Now, uniquely, those methodologies are exactly the same methodology of deployment. So it means that we can actually do a direct black and white comparison to tell us the experience an employee has of supporting their role from home compared to the experience they've had supported in their role in the corporate office setting. So that, again, wholly unique and an amazing experiment we've got available to us now to really understand the nature of that relationship between place and those colleagues around you. Now, something else has happened, and you saw this happening fairly quickly, probably towards the end of last year, but it's really picking up pace at the moment, is suddenly even chief executives are talking workplace. And for as long as I've been around you as a community, facilities management and real estate, we've been talking, all of us, right, about this need for FM and for real estate to be at the boardroom table. Well, suddenly, right, they're asking the questions. The CEOs, the CFOs, CHROs are leading that debate. Now, it's not a good place for them to be, I'd have to say, because damned if they do and damned if they don't in terms of what they're saying. So if you're Bill Winters at Standard Chartered and you're going on a full move to flexible, or you're David Solomon and you make a statement like home working is an aberration, you wish it was over, it's almost like you can't win in that respect. But there's an incredible opportunity then available. Well, once in a career, perhaps, opportunity. But do not squander it, right? This is my message for you this morning. You've been asking for this for years, and it is an opportunity of absolutely immense proportions for you to grab. Now, think about cleaning services. You spent the last 10 years distancing yourselves from cleaning services because it's a commoditized bottom end of the food chain, the market, the procurement project, and it's a sort of race to the bottom in terms of the cost of those services. But suddenly in February, March last year, you were all racing to bring those things back and putting them at the front of the shop window. You've got to get a sense of what your value is in that food chain in order to really demonstrate the value to these CEOs who now want to hear and want to understand what the role of workplace is. But I'd argue that you're in the process of squandering the very opportunity that is offered to you. And there's heaps of stuff out there on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on all of the social medias, even now in the Wall Street Journal, the Times quoting stuff, which is doing you no good at all, right? A questionnaire, a voting thing on LinkedIn that asks whether you're going to have people wearing masks once mandatory mask wearing is stopped is not helpful. You should be out there with the advice, not just checking in with each other. Where are your professional bodies in driving some intelligent thinking about advice to give you? And whatever happened to Matt Hancock, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but it's not about staying the right side of your FM, because I can tell you what CEOs are wondering now is whether they can trust FM as a result of that action. So really think about the scale and the size of the opportunity available to the industry, to the profession right now, and grab it, right by the horns and shake it, because it is an amazing proposition that's ahead of you if you get it right. To do that, you have to clarify your purpose, your role, and your mission in that journey. And the journey now is one that was actually, I think, started about 3 or 4 years ago, which is that employee experience journey. HR has been charting this for years and has got really, really clever and smart at measuring all of those individual touch points from the point when an employee enters an organization to the point where they leave it. We have got to a point, I think, where most people recognized that there was a distinct part of that, which was employees' workplace experience. And it had a big bearing on the ability of the employee to fulfill the best potential for themselves in those roles they were in. So suddenly employee experience had a distinct super specialist element around workplace experience. But of course, what's happened is that the battle that you've been having for attention with real estate services and FM services suddenly is falling under one single bracket, and that's the CHRO. The global head of human resources is your new client, is your new customer, and you better start changing the vocabulary and the way that you engage with your customer base to tune into their way of thinking. That's my other piece of advice for you right now. Now, this is a poll that we conducted across senior real estate leaders, and there's some interesting insights you can see from this. So 102 of the world's leading real estate leaders that are around us, so albeit they're already engaged in the idea of employees' workplace experience. But check these numbers: 1%, 29%, 34%, 36%, only 36% at the end have a strategy in place for their post-pandemic workplaces and have communicated it to employees. That means 64% of organizations are yet to tell their employees what to expect when it's safe for them to come back to the workplace. People, that's weeks away. And if employees don't understand what they're coming back to, if that's not been communicated, do you have any sense of the uncertainty then that they are facing? The CHRO does, and that's why I believe they're going to be your next client if they are not already. Now, from a data perspective, we always have been fortunate enough to work with the types of clients who are communicating, who are out there, who are doing great stuff to conceive and to design and co-create their workplace futures. And if you want to get more of the insights from these people, there's some great case studies on our website, as you'd expect, that will give you some sense of what these people are doing to lead the way. I particularly point you, from my perspective, Standard Chartered and Ericsson doing some incredibly great stuff in terms of understanding what that future journey looks like. So if you've got any touch points with those organizations, dig deep and watch and understand what they're doing. They have put people at the center of their organizational direction, their real estate, their facilities management, their workplace direction, but they're putting the employee purpose first. They're understanding the role the employee has in the organization, and they're designing systems outward from those individual employees. And they're involving the employees in the discussion and the co-creation and design of those systems now. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of trust, it takes a lot of empathy, but that's where those organizations are leading from. And this is part of why they're having to do that and wanting to do it. So you've got those two standards, the Leesman index score, the LMI, a global index of employees' workplace experience, currently sits on a 0 to 100 scale at 63.7. 70 above is excellent, 80 or above would be outstanding. Look at the score at the bottom for those 180,000 employees who've given us an insight into their home working experience, 74.0. So the average home works better than the average office. Spaces designed for living are supporting employees on average better than the average office. So the products you've been servicing are not fit for the very purpose for which they were intended. This is shocking. And this is where the industry's got to wake up, really, and understand its role in the future of workplace. Most likely is that employees assigned to a space would be better supported if they stayed home. That's shocking. And the numbers, if I were to have another hour with you to reveal the details of that, really reveal some quite tainted aspects to those workplace programs. Now, one of the fundamental drivers to an employee's home workplace experience is something as simple as the space they have at home. So if you're on one of those debates, or you're reading one of those trade media pieces around the death of the office, or the growth of the nomadic worker, think back to the really simple domestic aspect. What is it that somebody has at home? Those with a dedicated room or an office at home having a great experience. That's what I've got. I'm incredibly fortunate. But as you can see at the bottom, 29% of employees do not have space at home. So before you start predicting the death of the office, start dialing up your empathy and thinking about the experience those colleagues are having in city centres or younger employees. They're desperate to get back to the workplace. There are some things those workplaces do well, and there are some things that homes do better. You need to start understanding those and the reasons for them. So let's think about the various options that are being discussed at the moment. Remote first or office first? Which side of the debate are you going to come down on? Or are you going to accept that there's some way more complicated propositions in the middle? So the hybrid, the home and the office, or is it hybrid and you're going to throw in a bit of spice and add access to the third space? We've got some new research coming out in the next couple of weeks, which will reveal how many organizations are probing into the use of third space. Watch that carefully. Now, we can also tell you from a data-driven perspective for those employee insights, who's best suited to those different types of environments. So remote first, if you have low role complexity, that means basically that you have a small number of things that are typically within your role. Frankly, you're probably better off staying remote. Conversely, those with high role complexity, so those with many things that they do within a typical working day, are normally better suited to an office-based experience. And then there's a bit of a mush in the middle where you can see that it sort of starts to blend through, and there are some things that suit some and some things are others. So those with high paper dependency, with specialist roles, perhaps in labs or in security or technology roles, quality control roles, quite clearly not suited to a remote first strategy. But actually an office first program also not suited for those with a better experience at home, stating the flipping obvious perhaps. But if you've got a better experience at home because you have low role complexity in the top left, and you drag those people back compulsorily to a low performance, a low experience workplace, you're in for a shock in terms of the disengagement that those employees will start to exhibit. In the middle there, who is the hybrid model for, or the hybrid with third space not good for? Actually, the data is inconclusive in that respect. Frankly, there's some good and some bad bits in that middle space. So if you are involved in the debates around those models, I'd really urge you to think about inclusivity. How do you create an inclusive strategy for those employees? And get down to some of the nuts and bolts details. Think about what's happening when people come back to the space. I interviewed a chief executive just last week for a piece of content, the documentary content we're doing. He made the really valid point that if you've got half of the people dialing into a meeting and half are in the office in the meeting, those in the meeting in the office don't have a chat function anymore because the controller in the middle of the table doesn't have that. So it's not just all rosy for those people who are back or those people who are remote. There are going to be some new behaviors we've really got to think about, dial up and work through. So who and what is going on here, right? All of the stuff around hub and spoke, with the hub being the great place for collaborators. Look at this as another piece of insight research. We categorize those employees across highly individual roles right through to highly collaborative roles. And you can see very, very clearly that those with a highly individual role have a higher HLMI, their home-based experience score, than they do their office-based score. And at the other end of the spectrum, you can see that those with a highly collaborative role tend to have a higher experience in the workplace than they do at home. But there's only 6% of respondents are highly collaborative. So before you jump into one of those binary propositions around the hub being the creative heartland, you need to think about how many employees actually are highly collaborative in your role. Maybe there's some with collaborative activities, or maybe they just come to that space for collaboration on those odd occasions. But what do they then do for the rest of the day? Because very few employees have a whole working day rammed with collaboration. So stop the binary propositions, start getting into the weeds, start working out the detail. So place is the thing, right? What's the workplace why? If you can't answer this question, or your client can't answer the question, I'd argue that they haven't even started the right level of debate. Why do we need workplaces? Well, we need them because of this. You need to be strong in the workplace why. Because if you don't do it well, employees will stay at home. And frankly, why shouldn't they if they're having a better experience at home? Home working scores then. Let's look at the actual nuts and bolts of what the CEOs are interested in. We've been through it before, 74.0 versus 63.7 on our scale. What does that mean for chief executives? Well, it enables me to work more productively at home than I can in the workplace. 83% productivity agreement for home workers compared to 64% in the corporate workplace. These are the long list of things that are better in the average office. And this is the really long list of the things that are better in the average home. Now, averages are at risk of oversimplifying debates. So don't pin too much on averages, but I really think you need to start understanding how corporate workplaces have been underserving some of the fundamentally important parts of the average employee's day at work. Now, we can look at the other end of the spectrum because we do have this distinct group of Leesman plus spaces, our excellent and outstanding workplaces. They are competing. So what that means is you've basically got to do it well to do it right. So here on the right-hand side, you can see the distribution of those lists far more balanced in terms of the role that an outstanding office plays in employee experience compared to the average office. Now, we know why that is, right? And this is a diagram that I presented to you 3 years ago at the very same conference, which was looking at how employees' activity profile impacts their workplace needs. The maths is there. You can download this from the website. It tells you all about it. But as you can see, just 17% of employees have what we would consider to be a highly complex role. Those bottom two groups are the ones that are desperately in need of coming back to your workplaces. But the top two groups, the jury is out as to whether they need workplaces. They certainly don't need bad workplace. They don't need workplace that doesn't give them a good experience. So you've got a fight on your hands to justify the reason for workplace. Workplace might well be dead for those upper groups. It isn't for these bottom ones. They definitely need workplace experience. We've also given you the data that tells you how to drive a higher sentiment expression, higher satisfaction with workplace. This was a piece of research across 400,000 employees. Those lozenges around the factors in the middle, there are 13 of them that pick out sentiment superdrivers. We know that those sentiment superdrivers are the biggest bang for buck in delivering outstanding experience. So use them, defend them, invest in them. And the ones that are off the map, frankly, are the ones that you can value engineer without impacting what an employee feels of their day at work. So the last one for me really is time. Time is not on your side. As I said, we're weeks away now from people coming back from the holidays. And what are they doing? Well, organizations are thinking about this, the leading organizations, really acutely thinking about time distribution, time to return, all of that stuff. And they're really diving very, very deep. But remember, please, 50% of employees had no experience of working from home pre-COVID. And in February last year, many of them were not trusted to work remotely. And then in March, they were given a laptop and waved goodbye and asked whether they would mind doing the home working thing. What happens when we ask them to come back? Why are they going to come back? Well, those with if we look at our global survey over the pre-pandemic period to the in-pandemic period, what we can also see is those employees have been very generous with their homes. The grey bar on the right there tells you the reduction in employees with a non-work specific home location. So 34% pre-pandemic, 27% when we closed the survey at the end of last year. 24% compared to 31 in the middle blue there, who've created a dedicated workroom. So 7% of employees have gone home and created space that wasn't there before to dedicate for work. So they've been pretty committed. Now, you've also seen a lot of headline data about number of days in preference return to office. 2.5 days is the number that's generally being bandied around. Our data supports that. You can see here, 48% of respondents saying they'd like to spend between 2 and 3 days a week in the office when it's safe to do so. And across a sample of 48,000 there, you can see the distribution for those who want to spend the vast majority of their time in the office, just 15%. So the office isn't that popular. But there's a key driver for this, and it comes down to the experience they had in the office pre-pandemic. And on the next chart, what you can see here is a distinct pattern that emerges for one particular client where we measured a whole heap of buildings across the world for them. And you can see in the top row there, a building that scored 79.3 on our scale. That's just on the verge of being an outstanding experience for those employees. They also had a building, less proud of that, at the bottom of the scale there at 55.7. That's not a good building. There are multiple obstacles to a daily experience at work in that building. But look at the numbers in the blue. So these are the days per week that people want to be back in office. The vast majority of the people in that top building wanting to be back in 4 days or more per week, but not so in the bottom building. So before you send out a survey that asks the preference of an employee post-pandemic, you better also have something else up your sleeve to know why it is that an employee says 1 day a week or 5 days a week. Because without the background analysis, the number of days in preference to return to office, frankly, is little short of useless. So please spend the time, hence this part of the presentation, in going to the depths that you need to understand the preferences of the employees and why they're exhibiting those preferences. So there's a heap of things that I could go on for the whole duration of the conference about. You've got some great speakers who are going to touch on a number of these things, I know. Home environment is critical to understand what an employee has at home, not just in terms of the presence of other people, but the physical environment they have. The ergonomics of it is coming into your realm, people. You're going to have to take responsibility for those spaces. Check out what the health and safety executives have said, if you're UK based, about your legal requirement to check in on what those employees have at home. Noise levels, acoustics. I told you this the first time I presented at Workplace Futures 7 years ago, that noise levels were the principal productivity killer. They are also the reason why so many people are reporting high satisfaction with productivity from home, where they have amazing acoustic privacy. So you better get designing some better acoustic environments for people to come back to, because they're going to be coming back with a video-first communication style. Variety, we know that that's the lever for mobility. So when employees come back, it's unlikely you're going to be able to give them an assigned desk because the maths just don't stack up. But that means you're going to need to enable variety encourage mobility through enabling greater variety. Role complexity, you need to understand the role complexity of the organization in order to design those infrastructures. And then think about the tiniest details of inclusivity. The list does go on, and I don't have enough time to go through all of the indicators behind it for you. But the opportunity is yours to grab, and you must do it with time not on your side. I'm afraid we're weeks away from those employees returning, and if they return to spaces that simply have hazard tape on every other chair, or the vending areas are closed, they are going to be disenfranchised at levels that your CHROs in those organizations have never before experienced. So I'm hoping you have a load of questions. I'm really free to take them. You know where I am if you want to ask them to me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or direct to the info@leesmanindex.com inbox. If you really want to look at something that's somebody else who's doing some good work at the moment, actually you don't need to look that far. You can look at the UK Civil Service, who ran a survey across 25,000 civil servants. You can see their reply to the questionnaire. And the government has done something brave, and they put that data out in the public. So just search for that, home working and the UK Civil Service, and you can download the results of their inquiries from the government website. And it might give you a sense of the size of the prize, the size of the opportunity, also available to you if you work in a pacey fashion and you get out there and you get those information streams coming into you as quick as you can. Thank you. I know you're going to enjoy the rest of the event. I know you're going to have a heap of questions that you can brew up from my presentation that you can pose to some of the other speakers as well. So good luck and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for your time.